Good morning, class. We are level 3, hazardous locations. On this course, this is to me is like the not too difficult, but a little more difficult than the other ones because the classifications of different hazardous materials and locations that can cause explosions just by the materials that have been used. It could be like a woodworking area, with just the woodworking material can cause a fire. Also paint booths and different aspects of electrical work or construction that we have to have special material to install our electrical. Rigid conduit is one way for us to help prevent explosions because the walls of the construction of the conduit is thicker and it's threaded, and so in that aspect it's very solid, so if there was an explosion it would stay inside the conduit. Any kind of fire or whatever might happen, sparks in a conduit. Like I said, the different types of construction locations that we do work in. I have experience. I have in a job that I was working at a textile location, and all they did was cut rags all day long. They would buy these big bundles of rags and all day cut, and then size them down to smaller portions, like about a foot by foot or so. And the whole area was filled with fibers of fibers. And so one day on the second floor of this office, there was a spark. Just by a little spark caused the buildup of this fragments of fibers to ignite, and it burned the place. Not all down, but it burned it enough so that they couldn't reopen because it was a fire hazard. It was a class, it was one of these classes that needed to be done properly according to code. So what I did was I came in and we reran the conduit and did it properly. And there was a lot of mistakes on that job, but anyway, this one spark ignited a fire because of the hazard materials. And this is an example here. Paint booths, like when you paint your car and stuff, they have special on-off switches. Like if this door was to open up, it would automatically turn off the system. Or if there was a fire or any kind of fire in the dampers, the system would turn off. It's a special way of doing electrical, and everything inside the paint booth has to be vapor-proof lights. So it's pretty neat when you work with this type of class locations. You got to know enough to do it right. So this is for me one of the hardest ones to learn as a early journeyman. So be careful when you work with these classes of classifications of installations. Since we don't live on a farm, it's kind of hard for us to understand how this stuff works. I'm from Colorado. I did live near a farm, so I got to see this stuff, but I wasn't an electrician back then. So I didn't understand it fully why the materials that they were using. But be mindful when you're working with this type of classification. You know, not some environments you think it's not a problem, but then it really is. So be mindful of what's of your surroundings. Yeah, see, it's Class D locations for fibers. That's in a textile location. I actually got to see. It wasn't a mill or anything, but they were cutting rags, and it was causing fibers to fly in the air, and it was something else. And just a little spark started a fire. This right here, you have tables in your code book as well. It's good to go through it a couple times, and kind of have an idea of what hazard areas are, and so that you understand the difference between a hazard location and a normal operating locations. A lot of electricians don't know anything about this except for the ones who work directly in it every day. So go through it, understand it, try not to memorize it. It's a waste of time trying to memorize this stuff, but just know where it's at and how to get to it. That's the most important thing of being a journeyman. You don't memorize the whole book, but you know how to get back to the locations where you need to know. A lot of times when we have explosion-proof fittings and stuff like that, wiring methods, if you go to gas stations, you'll see that you'll have these at the gas pump, and it's up to 18 inches, and then above 18 inches you'll have regular conduit. And I used to think, that's ridiculous. Why do you have explosion-proof fittings and conduit only up to 18 inches and then have regular conduit above that? Gas is gas, it's going to explode, but not necessarily. What gas does has a vapor. The vapor will rise up to about 18 inches. It's too heavy to rise any higher. So that's why gas probably rise lower than 18 inches. But our rigid conduit has to be around 18 inches from the ground level up. And then we had to fill them in. And there's one time that I had to actually open up one of those explosion-proof fittings, and I had to drill out all the hard material that's inside, so that we can re-pull wire. That was a task. I mean, normally you're not supposed to do that, but I was an apprentice. They had me do it. I did it. We pulled new wire. So yeah, this is something that you can't just look at and memorize it. I'm not too sure if you have this section, but it's good to know where it's at. Go through it a couple times, kind of read through it. It just kind of gives you information, what you need to know, certain applications. Well, I think you should learn the classifications first, and just figure out what class it is, and then from there move on. So it's a grain conveyor tunnel. What classification, division, and group would this be applied to this installation? It's look at that. Everything is explosion proof. You find these in the shipyards. Not so much the explosion proof, but just the connector and stuff. I'm not familiar with this type of installation, but be aware of what you see out there, and understand when you see something like this out in the field, then you're in a hazard location. So be mindful of it. Yeah, here we go. Class 1, Division 1. 18 inches the height of the vapor. A lot of times in hangars, they do the same thing. When I was working for Dyna Electric, we worked in a lot of hangars, and the hangars had the same situation with all explosion-proof piping. Came up to 18 inches. The JP5 acts just like regular fuel. Here's some more information on hangars, I suppose. It's something that if you can, especially if you're working in a airport or something like that, be mindful of what's out there. Kind of look at it and see what division you're in. But as a commercial electrician, I don't see much of this. I'm sure you will. So keep your eyes open, see what you find out there, and see what division you're in. We have a lot of paint booths and stuff like that in this area, so you should have that type of division. Here's some questions for you guys. Give you a second to read it. All right, that's these explosion proof type of materials that we use, I've used maybe 3 or 4 times in my lifetime being an electrician out here in San Diego, but it doesn't mean that you won't go through it. So be mindful what it is. It's very expensive parts, materials, very expensive. So be mindful if you guys become contractors or whatever, that this stuff is expensive. So you gotta know what you're doing, and know your classification levels when you do projects like this. And most jobs like this you won't do them unless there's a set of blueprints. So on your blueprints, you'll be classified. You'll understand what's going on. But if you're a builder, you might have to know the codes very well in order to do the right stuff. All right, that's it for this for explosion proof. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. I'm here to learn as well about teaching. So if you have anything you want me to talk about more or different ways, please let me know. Again, this is Edward Ochoa, your instructor. Thank you.